Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. So I am Shay Meisels Eran, and okay. עכשיו, בסדר? ככה זה בסדר?
אנחנו לא שומעים אותי. אולי בצד השני?
אוקיי.
נראה לי זה יותר קרוב לפה.
איפה? אוקיי. בסדר. בסדר? אוקיי.
דברי?
שומעים?
לא, זה לא החיבור שלי, אז לא.
Okay. I will try to be loud. So, ASD, Autism Spectrum Disorder, or ASD, is a complex of lifelong neurodevelopmental impairments that nowadays has no curative treatment. However, studies indicate that behavioral therapy and supportive therapy can improve the prognosis and daily function of children with ASD. The required treatment is early, intensive, long-term, and multidisciplinary, and includes behavioral therapy and supportive therapy such as speech therapy, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, and more. These treatments can be a significant burden on the families because of the financial expenses. For example, a study conducted in the US found that 25 hours of treatment per week can cost up to $80,000 for 1 year. Therefore, in the US, there are laws to ensure coverage insurance of these treatments. So in Israel, as in the rest of the world, the prevalence of ASD is continuously increasing. In 2018, there was above 18,000 children diagnosed with ASD in Israel. So here in Israel, we also have a law that promotes these treatments, health promoting treatment, or HPT. HPT provides 14 hours of treatment per week for children under 7 years old. The treatments take place mostly in special education kindergartens and contains speech therapy, occupational therapy, therapy by a physician, by psychologist, and more. But in practice, according to the state controller's report, many children that are entitled to these treatments are not getting any treatment at all or only partial treatment. So our study objectives was to find what are the factors affecting utilization of HPT services in Israel and to estimate how many children do not get full treatment. Our study population based on 2 samples. Sample 1 included 60 children, and it was based on online questionnaire. We asked parents for children with ASD to answer questions about the socio-demographic factors and HPT utilization factors about their children. According to the answers, we divided the sample into 3 groups: full treatment, partial treatment, and no treatment. And then we compare between the groups the socio-demographic factors and the HPT utilization factors. We asked about the district of residence, the type of living place, the parents' education, the income of the parents, ethnic origin, religiousness, the kind of the educational institution that provide the treatments, accessibility to therapy, and more. The second sample, sample 2, was based on reports of the Ministry of Health that examined the HPT treatments provided in special education kindergartens in all Israel. We took random 138 kindergartens and analyzed this report and divided this sample into two groups, full treatment and partial treatment. And here also we compared socio-demographic factors and HPT utilization factors between the groups. So this is a comparison between sample 1 and sample 2. You can see that no significant differences found between the samples except in the district variable. The reason for this it's because we distributed our online questionnaire mainly among parents from the south of Israel, while sample 2 contains kindergartens from all over Israel. To ensure that sample 2 reliably represents all the kindergartens in Israel, we did a comparison between all the kindergartens with HPT in Israel, a data we obtained from the Ministry of Health, and compared it to sample 2. We could compare only these variables that you can see, district, ethnic origin, living place, and organization, because the data was limited. You can see that no significant difference was found between sample 2 and all the kindergartens with HPT, which means it reliably represents all the kindergartens in Israel. So we are moving to our results. This is the results of sample 1, the sample of the questionnaires. You can see that we found two main differences in the parents' education and in the average household income, so that low parent education and low income of the parents were associated with fewer treatment hours of HPT. When we asked about private setting, treatment in private setting, we found that consuming speech therapy and occupational therapy was associated with the group that had no treatment at all of HPT. This is the results of sample 2. We took the variables that showed a significant difference between the groups, and we used logistic regression to adjust to co-founders and interactions. And here we found that occupational therapy, district, and physiotherapy showed a significant difference between the groups, partial treatment of HPT and full treatment of HPT, which means that partial occupational therapy and partial physiotherapy were associated with partial treatment, total partial treatment. Also, we found that living in the periphery of Israel, mainly in the south of Israel and the area of Jerusalem, was associated with partial treatment. When we checked co-founders, we checked association between the variables, and we found an association between occupational therapy and the district, which is linked to what I said earlier. The association, we found that partial occupational therapy was associated with living in the south and the area of Jerusalem, living in the periphery of Israel. So to verify all of our results, we used again the data of the Ministry of Health, the limited data. We took kindergartens without HPT treatments and kindergartens with HPT treatments, partial or full. We didn't have the data if the treatment is partial or full. And we compared them. And here we found also that the distinct variable showed a significant difference between the two groups. So living in the periphery was associated with partial or no treatment at all. So the conclusions in the aspect of socio-demographic factors are that low education, low household income, and living in the periphery of Israel are associated with less treatment of HPT, which means that the children that are entitled to this treatment who lives in the periphery of Israel do not get full treatment. Also, we found that 36.7% of the children are not getting HPT at all, and 30% are getting only partial treatment. In addition, most of the missing treatment hours in the partial treatment are in occupational therapy. We found it based on the association between occupational therapy, partial occupational therapy, and partial treatment at all, consuming occupational therapy in private setting, and the connection between partial occupational therapy and the district, the periphery of Israel. So if we are talking about health policy implications, we can say that we think that the main effort needs to be done in the periphery of Israel. Second, the supplement of treatment hours should include mainly occupational therapy hours. Third, resources should be invested in providing more treatment hours in the existing settings. And this is because studies indicate that the intensity of the treatments is an important factor in improving the prognosis of the children with ASD. So we think that resources should be invested in convert the partial treatment group into full treatment group. At last, we know that this is the very beginning of the study, and further research is needed to be done to find other effective solutions. Our limitations was that sample 1 is a small sample, only 60 children, and because we used an online questionnaire, it could lead to selection bias, and also because we asked the parents about treatment that the children got in the past, it could lead to recall bias. But to overcome all of these limitations, we used sample 2 and the data from the Ministry of Health. That's it. Thank you for listening.